Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Black Fawn Distro's Takeover Tuesday. I'm your host, Benner from Black Fawn Distro, and I am joined this week by Kelly McNeely, who is a horror journalist supreme extraordinaire from iHorror, which is one of the biggest horror sites on the planet. And she's been a friend of ours for a long time, or acquaintance, and then a friend. We've known each other for a number of years. Hey, Kelly, thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking over our Instagram today and sharing all of your photos from everything from set visits to mixing drinks to crafts to horror films, and of course everything to do with our favorite genre as well. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I've been following the Takeover Tuesday for a while, so I'm honored and flattered that you guys would ask me to pop in and take over. I'm so excited.
Awesome. Well, I think and where are you broadcasting from right now? I don't need a specific address, but city.
I'm in St. Catharines, so I'm right outside Niagara Falls.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And so iHorror is an American site. You've worked for them for a number of years, and written a ton of articles as well as a ton of reviews. They're a U.S. company, right? And you're based in St. Catharines. So are you the Canadian correspondent or one of the Canadian correspondents, or how does that work?
Yeah, I'm basically the Canadian correspondent. I think we had another one for a while. I'm not sure if he's still on, but I'm the main Canadian correspondent. So I do a lot of the film festivals, like I do Fantasia Fest and TIFF and Toronto After Dark and stuff like that, because I'm relatively local, except for Fantasia, which I've been able to do remotely, which is awesome. And then, it's been fantastic because there's a lot of Canadian content that is so good and so awesome, and it's been amazing to be able to go do set visits and be able to go do red carpets and again TIFF and Toronto After Dark, and it's been so much fun. I've had such a blast doing it.
Awesome. And just for everyone that's tuning in right now, if you're watching the show, if you have a comment or anything like that or a question for Kelly, throw it down in the comment section and we'll throw it up during the broadcast. Of course, getting into reviewing horror films, obviously, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you got into the idea of writing reviews because you loved horror films so much, right? But how did you get involved with how did that start? Like, how did you go from saying, I really like horror films, I want to write about them, and then working your way up and writing? Because iHorror is I think they've got like a massive following on Facebook. I think it's over 4 million.
I think something
4.2 million.
Yeah.
And obviously lots of huge followings on other social platforms as well. But walk us through that. How did you get from point A to point B to point C, I guess?
Well, I guess it's kind of funny that it's essentially full circle, because I found out on Instagram that they were looking for new writers. So I was following them for a little bit on Instagram, and I saw that they just put in a general call for new writers. They were looking for new additions. And I had no idea what would be required, because I was just, I just hadn't done any writing since high school, basically. It's been a while. So I just put together a couple of little draft pieces. I think I wrote something on Bone Tomahawk, and I wrote something on I think just a couple Canadian horror films, like just listing some of my favorites. And I sent that off as a little application. And then they got back to me almost immediately and said, like, hey, come on board. That would be awesome. Can you do a couple of articles a week? And so I started off doing news pieces and like quick little lists. And then I sort of moved up to doing, I think my first interview was with George Mihalka talking about My Bloody Valentine, when it was, forget what anniversary of that, but it was around Valentine's Day that we did a nice little piece with him. And then so I went from there into doing reviews and film festivals, and it's just sort of grown exponentially, which has been really cool.
Awesome. And what's your favorite aspect of working for that site? Like, what piece do you like writing the most? Like, what gets you going? Like, is it attending the events? I know we haven't had a lot in 2020, but obviously, they should come back, and there was a lot previous to that. Or is it going to sets? Is it actually just watching the film and reviewing it? Like, what's your favorite sort of, what's your jam when it comes to that?
Yeah, actually my jam, thing that I love doing the most is just because I feel like it's really easy to kind of get my voice across, is doing lists. Lists I find are super fucking fun because I can just sort of take a topic or a general idea, put together a whole bunch of movies, and just put them out as recommendations to people. Because that's my favorite thing to do, is just talk to friends and just recommend horror movies based on like what I think they might like or what they but I think they might be interested in, depending on what level of horror they're into. So that's one of my favorite things to do, is just to like recommend movies to people. So I think lists are kind of just like a really fun way to do that and talk a little bit about movies that I'm really excited about. But I love doing set visits. I've got to do a couple so far, which has been really, really cool to sort of be on the other side of the camera and watch the movies when I'm reviewing them and be like, oh, I'm just on the other side of that wall in this scene, which is kind of nifty. So I love doing set visits. I love doing lists. Some interviews can be really, really cool. I just did Tony Todd not too long ago. I did Takashi Miike for TIFF not this past year, but the year before, when he did First Love. So interviews can be fantastic, but also really intimidating. But I think definitely lists and set visits are two of my favorite things to write.
I know specifically I met Tony Todd a couple times, and nothing for anything more than a few minutes, but he's definitely an intimidating guy. Like, he's a big guy. I don't know how tall he is, but he's towering. And he's just got that menace to him because we've seen him in so many movies. I mean, specifically Candyman and obviously the Final Destination movies. But I mean, he's got a huge list. But also a super nice guy. Like,
lovely. Yeah.
Like I remember we saw him. We were in Niagara Falls, actually. We saw him at. He was just at the bar. Like, he just come in like just after the convention. He was just sitting at the bar just by himself, hanging out, and we told our waiter, we were like, hey, send whatever Tony Todd's having, like whatever it is, the next one's on us, just send it to him. And he actually the waiter came back over and he said, oh, by the way, he's like, Tony wants to just wanted to say something. And we all look over at the bar, and he's just like, gives us one of these. And that's because we didn't want to bother him, right? Like, we know what it's like, right? You're like, you put in a whole day of work, and you're just like, the last thing he wants us is, like, coming out, be like, hey man, like, can you do the Candyman thing? So like, but it was a cool experience. But he's like, everything I've ever heard about that guy, he's a super nice dude.
Yeah, and he's a huge theater nerd, which is really cool because I studied theater in university. So when I kind of mentioned that, like, I knew a little bit about theater and I work in theater, and that kind of opened up a big like window in the conversation between the two of us. I could tell he just really wanted to talk about theater for a while. So it was great, but I was like, no, I got to steer us back to horror for a second. but that was really, really cool because he's had such an impressive and amazing theater career as well. Yeah.
Do you find it like when you're interviewing people, like, I know there's always a concern of like, am I asking the questions that the other 10 people before me have asked, and is this just repetition for them? How do you get to the point where it's like even just in researching the actor or actress or filmmaker, like, is that on the top of your mind? Like how do you get some questions here that are going to be fresh, that are going to kind of elicit some cooler sort of like off the cuff moments and off the cuff responses? And how do you go about finding how do you decide on what those questions should be?
Yeah, one thing that I like to do is part of doing my research as well, is I like to read interviews that they've done with other outlets as well. So I'll read other interviews with other people. That way I can sort of get an idea of what certain answers have been from different topics, and I can sort of like pick and choose and sort of say like, oh, they've talked a little bit about this here, but I feel like I could ask a little bit more about that in this direction. So I'll pick apart just this tiny piece from that answer and try and phrase it into a different question that I can ask to sort of steer it this way. Or also just trying to think of like, what do I want to know? What am I genuinely curious about? What do I think they would want to talk about is another big one. So if you're talking to a writer, like, what's their inspiration? For directors, what's their inspiration? What do they get excited about? There's some questions that you can't escape. Everyone's going to be asking them that question. But if you can kind of try and phrase it in a way that maybe gets a little bit of a different, or at least an excited response, then that's kind of how I try and approach it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've noticed that too. I think that was one of my most surprising things, like from years ago, and then doing this for a number of years as well, like on when we're on the convention circuit and stuff, is that most of those people like that are on the screen, there's this level of like detachment that you have from them because you're not close with them. But when you actually meet them, they're just like, they're regular people, right?
Yeah.
They like movies. That's why they work in the movie industry, like, for the most part, right? Like, I mean, I can count on maybe one hand the people that I've met that don't like doing what they're doing, but the majority of people they love films. They love, and not just like acting in them. It's a job, obviously. But they like other people's art, I guess, for lack of a better word, and they're interested in that. And they also recall back to like when they were kids and when they were not an actor. I always feel like actors and actresses go back to that time when they remember what it's like when it was like when they weren't in the industry, which I always feel is fascinating.
Yeah, and I think that it's something that's really kind of cool to try and pick apart in a little bit is that idea that, like, again, they are just regular people. And for the most part, people that work on horror love horror movies. You don't really get involved in the genre if you're not like really into the genre, to the extent that like directors and writers and things like that. For actors, sometimes it's just a job, so they're sometimes a little bit less involved. But I find that most people that I've spoken with that are really involved in the genre do it because they love it. They're so passionate about it, which makes it really easy to kind of try and find stuff to talk to them about, because you can talk to them about their favorite horror movies. You can talk to them about things that inspire them and things that get them excited. And I think it's the same thing with science fiction fans as well, is that like science fiction fans love sci-fi, horror fans love horror, but people that are doing romantic comedies, sometimes it's just a job. It's not necessarily that they're like super passionate about romantic comedies. So it's a lot easier to kind of talk to people about genre films, I think.
Yeah. There's no romantic comedy conventions, right?
Exactly.
So,
exactly. That'd be very awkward, I think. Yeah. Just a lot of people looking for love in the wrong places.
Yeah. A convention would be one of those places, right?
Yeah.
So, well, we might be onto something there. So, listen, as I mentioned before, if anyone that's tuning in right now, if you've got a comment or a question for Kelly, just throw it down in the comment section on Facebook, and we can throw it up on the screen during the broadcast. We've got a couple comments coming in right now. Just going back to what you were saying, just a quick message from Kevin saying, Kelly got the best lists, yo. So, just a shout out to your list abilities, which is great. And also a quick word in from Candace too, is just saying Kelly has such great taste. So
thanks, Candace.
I'm assuming she's talking about movies, but it's probably about everything as well. And we'll get to some of those other interests and hobbies of yours in a few moments. But now most of your reviews are up online at iHorror.com, right? And we'll just throw this up on the screen too. So the company's app also, they just launched an app, or maybe not recently, but in the kind of recently, I guess, is the new iHorror app. You can actually download it through the Apple and Google Play stores, and I highly recommend it. They've got up-to-date news, and as well as all of Kelly's reviews. And are your lists through that app as well? Like, can they find?
Yeah, they can find lists through the app. If you go, I think we usually have a whole section that's just lists that you can find a bunch of them there, or you can find them through my author page. If you click on anything that I've written, click on my name, and everything I've done will pop up there, and you can sort of sift through and try and find. I think I haven't done any lists in a while, which makes me sad, but I'm working on my best of for 2020. So that's the next big list that I'm working on. And I've got a couple of other ones that I'm percolating. Ideas of like writing lists about rock bands and horror movies and stuff like that, like Green Room and Slumber Party Massacre 2 and stuff like that.
Yeah, you know what? It's Green Room to me. I love that movie, and I can tell you, like when I was on the road with bands and stuff like that and doing tours, what makes that movie so scary is that that's exactly how it happens. Like I've never been in a situation like that, obviously, but the idea that you're a band, you're in a small town, you don't know, you're on like $10 of gas, you're just trying to get to the show. The show's canceled. Oh, some guy knows a dude that lives in this other town, and they can throw you on the bill. Like that's exactly how it happens. So whoever wrote that movie or contributed those aspects to the script is exactly. And then you show up. Like now, I've never shown up at like a neo-Nazi compound or anything like that. But I've gone to shows where I've been like, sorry, this is like it's in the middle of nowhere. Like we don't know where we are. Like hopefully this is cool. I mean, I guess there's 5 of us, so
can very easily turn into a horror movie.
5 band people and me. So, but yeah. Anyway, I find that stuff fascinating for sure. How that real life sort of component kind of gets pulled into horror movies, right?
Yeah, because Jeremy Saulnier, who wrote it and directed it, and he did Blue Ruin as well as I can't remember the name of his other one that's really, really fantastic. It's on Netflix as well. But I think he was involved in the scene in a really, really big way, in the punk scene in a really big way, and that's sort of where he pulled a lot of his inspiration from, was like his own experiences, like going around with bands and going to shows and shit like that. So like it's very authentic, which is really appreciated, because again, like you get that sense that like he's been there, he's done it, he knows what he's talking about, which is really cool.
And I thought the I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy who plays Worm in that movie, might be the most threatening presence I saw on screen that year for sure.
Yeah.
And I know he's just like a regular guy too, but the amount of like just intimidating dread that guy just puts out on screen in that movie. If you haven't seen
Countryman.
Green Room, watch it. Blue Ruin's excellent as well.
So good.
But Green Room, if you are a fan of like, if you've ever been on the road in a band, go check out that movie. It's absolutely amazing. So
Even if you haven't, check it out. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anton Yelchin, one of his last movies that he made,
Yeah.
unfortunately, before he passed away, but just a fantastic insight of how good that actor, or how good of an actor he actually was, just taken away too soon. But speaking of rock and roll, this is a great segue because you posted an image, a rock and roll image I thought was rock and roll today, and I think you would agree. So I figured, hey, let's just set aside like about 5 minutes or so to talk about the complete awesomeness that is Nick Cage. So like Nick Cage is this, like, you're a reviewer. You've interviewed him at TIFF, I believe, right? Which was your post today on our Instagram. How rock and roll is this guy? I mean, he's done so many things, some good, some not so good, but he always seems, I feel like he does so much that he always has something that's really, really good coming out.
Yeah.
Color Out of Space was, I thought, fantastic. I loved Mandy. Speaking of rock and roll, like somebody asked me what Mandy, what I thought of Mandy. I said, Mandy is like, the entire movie is like the greatest doom metal video ever made. Like it's like a 90-minute doom metal video. And that's the whole movie. And it's just absolutely bananas. But like, what do you like about Nicolas Cage?
Oh my gosh. What I like about Nicolas Cage is, and so for starters, I've been, my first introduction to Nick Cage was, I watched a lot of action movies in the 90s. So like Con Air, The Rock, oh my gosh, what is the other one that I can't think of right now? It's going to drive me crazy. But
Face Off?
Face Off, thank you. Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot Face Off. But Face Off, Con Air, and The Rock were like my jam when I was a kid. So I grew up watching Nick Cage in those kind of roles. So then seeing him transition into shit like Mom and Dad and Mandy and like all that kind of absolutely bananas stuff where he just is at peak Nicolas Cage has been really, really fun. Because he's just, I don't know, he's finding something in himself. He's finding this niche that he's carved out and he's just running with it. And it's really, really fun to watch, I think.
Yeah, like it's funny that you mentioned some of those movies because I mean, I loved The Rock. I remember seeing that movie in the theater and I was like, this is the greatest action movie ever made. And it's like it was Michael Bay, right? So it was before Michael Bay. I think it was before Michael Bay became Michael Bay that everyone
just became like a punchline.
Bad Boys. I think it was his second movie, maybe his third movie. So The Rock came out and it has like Ed Harris, Tony Todd's in that movie too. Ed Harris and Sean Connery, and it's like he's all this like Nicolas Cage is sort of like he's like a main character, but I think he would even admit this himself. He's playing second fiddle to Sean Connery, of course, but
you always are, yeah.
And then he made all these action movies, and like you said, he's transitioned into like I don't think he's ever not made a movie like he's in every genre. I think I can't think of a genre that he hasn't really tackled, right?
Yeah, so he's done dramas, he's done romantic comedies, he's done action, he's done horror, he's done everything really. Like he's hitting all the boxes. He's checking them all off.
So I don't like. I feel, and also I heard this interview once where, he. By the way, like Chris Alexander. If you've never heard Chris Alexander's Nicolas Cage story, the next time you corner him, ask him to tell you Nicolas Cage story. I think he put it online, but get him to tell you it in person. It's like it's the funniest story I've ever heard. But I mean, speaking of Nicolas Cage, like he bought a castle and all this stuff, and he's bought like all these crazy things. And I read an interview once with him. It said that he said he could, so he did.
Yeah.
And I feel like everything in his career is like that. Like, why are you going to do this movie? Well, because I can, and so I should, right?
That's
and I always feel like if I think about that for more than 5 seconds, I always think to myself, I would do the exact same thing. So,
oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I love that he does that. I love that. And I know he's got this whole like shamanistic approach to acting as well that he's talked about that I can't remember enough details on to speak on it accurately. But if you have the time, look up, just type in shaman acting Nick Cage. And like, it's this crazy interview story. He talks about like his whole process for acting and it's absolutely bananas. But yeah, I love that attitude of like, I could, so I did. Because if you have that kind of money and time and talent, like, why the fuck not, right? Like, just go for it. Have fun. Do it.
Yeah, like I
I
mean, I
love
would
that.
if I had the money, I would buy a castle for sure.
Absolutely.
100%. Like I would do it just for the joke, just to tell people like, "Hey, I bought a castle. You want to come check out my castle?" And everyone
Yeah.
would. If I had a buddy of mine that bought a castle, and he said, "Hey, you want to come fly by and check out the drawbridge and stuff?" I'd be like, "Yes, absolutely,
Hell
100%."
yes, I do.
So, let's just jump back to a few questions or a few
Yeah.
comments that we've got here. We've got okay. Our other friend Kelly, our other friend Kelly says Kelly is my other favorite Kelly. So
Kelly
thanks.
is my other favorite Kelly.
Have you guys ever thought about doing a talk show together, like Kelly and Kelly, like you
Kelly
guys,
versus Kelly.
like a legal team or something, like you?
Oh, that would be great. We did do. I stopped by on her podcast to talk about a Serbian film, actually. So we did a little Kelly and Kelly Taboo Terrors Shock Talk episode where we talked about a Serbian film at length, which was really fun because that movie is bananas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so sorry, again, because there's two Kellys. I'll go give other Kelly two comments, but she said, "You're brilliant." I'm assuming she's talking about you. She might be just referencing herself in the third person. I don't know, but I assume she's talking about you. But what's your favorite horror film that you've seen recently?
So I loved Possessor, Brendan Cronenberg's newest film. I thought it's an absolute masterpiece. It's gorgeous. It's brilliant. It's just heavy in all the right ways, and it echoes a little bit of what his dad has done, but it turns it in his own very personal way, which I really appreciate. Like he still has that kind of relationship with like technology and sexuality and the corruption of technology for really nefarious purposes, but in a way that's almost corporate. Which I think is fantastic. And then I just rewatched Host the other night because again, I'm working on my best of list, and I forgot how legitimately scary Host is because that is a fantastic movie. Rewatching it, I turned off all the lights in my apartment, and I just sort of sat by myself and watched it. And Rob Savage does such an incredible job of making you care for these characters because there's no soundtrack. It's just all continuous. It's actors that we haven't really seen much of before, so you're able to connect with them really, really well. Um, and they just sell the shit out of it. Like it's so personal and it's so intimate, and there's some legitimately scary jump scares, which can be really hard to do. But he does them very, very well. And I love the fact that it was all kind of built around this prank that he played on his friends that he tweeted about, and the tweet went viral. So then he was able to make it into a feature film. And then after Host was sort of screened and everything, he ended up getting a 3-picture deal with, I think, Blumhouse. So he's working on his first of that 3-picture deal right now, which is amazing. I'm so proud of him. That's fantastic. Not that I know him, but I'm proud of him all the same. But yeah, I think those are two of my favorites that I've seen recently. And then I also recently watched The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which I thought was fantastic. It's got a moment in it that reminds me of like the basement scene in Zodiac.
Right.
And that's all I'll say, because I don't want to say too much about the movie because I think it's fantastic to go in. I love going into movies as blind as I possibly can. I avoid watching trailers as much as I can if it's a movie that I'm like really, 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 really stoked about, because I find that a lot of trailers show too much of the movie. And I want to go in and like not know what to expect. That's really exciting to me. So I think that's one of the things I love about going to film festivals is a lot of the time they don't have trailers for the movies yet. So you're just going in like sight unseen. And I've seen some of my favorite movies.
Buzz like at the festival itself, like somebody says, "Hey, are you going to go see whatchamacallit?" And you say, "No, I hadn't thought about it." "Oh, you should." I've heard good things, and then you're going to go thinking like, "Okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to get here, but let's just jump in and see what it's like." And then that whole film festival experience is sort of that's what's missing, I think, from the online component. And there's nothing you can do. It's no one's fault. There's nothing you can do to replicate that, right? Whereas you're at the bar afterwards or just outside in the lobby or outside the theater being like, "Oh man, that was good, and I liked how they did this," and then you have that conversation going. And also as well, like I feel like it's one of those things that's missing because we're all like, there's so much talk about like what differences people have and all this stuff and what we can agree on and all this stuff, but like beside that, movies I think are like one thing that everyone who likes genre films or likes horror films in particular, they can come from anywhere. And then you have that sort of agreement after a film festival saying, yeah, I really like that movie and here's why. And you could be talking to complete strangers or people you've just met, and you're kind of sharing those ideas and discussing kind of those points. And anyway, I hope that comes back.
It's such a community feel to it, you know. It's like when you're waiting in line for the next movie and you just end up talking to the person behind you, like, oh, what have you seen recently? Oh, is that good? Should I check that out? And it's just, there's such a community to it, which I really, really love. And two of my favorite films that I've seen in film festivals, again, like I watched Sight Unseen. I hadn't heard anything about it. I just knew The Devil's Candy, I knew was directed by Sean Byrne, and I loved The Loved Ones. So I was like, I'm going to check that out for sure. And it's one of my favorite movies now. I love it to death. I think it's fantastic.
I still have yet to see Possessor, but I haven't heard a single person talk about that Possessor is not something worth seeing. I heard it's amazing, and which is like crazy because it's it's Cronenberg's son, and not that he should be judged by his father's name, obviously, but it's inescapable, right? When you especially when you get into genre stuff, it's like and he's making these movies, but the fact that it's stood on its own so well and resonated with so many people, I think it won Best Film at Sitges overall, and won Best Director, is amazing. So it's good to see that that the genes carried through. Another generation will have another awesome Cronenberg making really provocative films going forward over the next few decades, which is fantastic. So
he's doing a bit of a Joe Hill that way, where it's like he's got his dad's reputation, but he's doing his own thing and he's doing it really, really well.
Yeah. Which is fantastic. So a couple quick other questions here. Just a quick mention from Kevin. Again, Possessor is so sick. Yes, I know, Kevin. I need to watch it. I'm sorry. I should have done my homework. Matthew Amos jumping in here saying The Rock is so good.
It's my favorite action movie.
And also, just with Candace, she said, shout out to Kelly's horror-inspired drink videos. Will there be more? Okay, and that's a great segue. So we have, we've talked about horror. You're a journalist for iHorror. You do that most of the time, but you also have some other hobbies and hobbies as well as other ventures, side hustles, whatever you want to call them. But you do horror crafting, I guess is, unless you have a different name for it, and called the Creepy Crafter, which if people want to check you out online for the Creepy Crafter, we'll throw that website up shortly. But also you're a bit of a mixologist, right? You do mixing of drinks, and tell us more about that. Floor is yours.
Yeah, so I appreciate you calling me a mixologist because I completely make everything up as I go. I worked as a bartender for a little bit when I was transitioning from high school to university, but at the time it was in a very, very small town bar in in the Cambridge, Ontario area. So it was just mostly slinging bottles of beer. So I didn't know mixology whatsoever. But I've always had a lot of fun sort of playing bartender. It's always something I've really enjoyed, just like taking different flavor palettes and coming up with different combinations and throwing them together. And so I figured when I was working on stuff with the Creepy Crafter, I was sort of in between crafting ideas because I had everything I needed for my house. So I was like, I got nothing to craft right now. So I thought, why not put together some horror themed drinks for the holidays? So it was coming up to Halloween, I think. So I did some fall or Halloween themed horror drinks for like your Halloween party that you might have. And so that one was really popular. It sort of took off. So then I've done a couple more of those. And but I think usually I'll try and like find recipes online, and I'll try and come up, like create my own little mix of what they've done. Because again, I'm not a mixologist at all. But the last one I did, which was my quarantine edition, was just me making shit up out of what I had in my cabinets, which was a lot of fun. And some of it went really well, some of it didn't, but it's fun to sort of find those different flavor palettes and those different combinations along the way. So I have one that it's melted mostly right now, but I mixed myself a little tropical zombie brain before we came on today. And I think I posted a photo of it on, I don't know why I'm pointing over there. Well, I posted a photo of it on the Instagram earlier. So, but yeah, so it's a lot of fun. I definitely want to do more of those videos because they're super crazy fun to do. I usually take an afternoon because the lighting's best. I have lots of natural light with my windows. So I'll do one in the afternoon and spend about an hour just mixing and drinking drinks. And then I edit while drunk, which is really entertaining for me, and makes it bearable listening to myself over and over and over while I try and edit it down into a reasonable length. So yeah, it's been so much fun, and I definitely want to do more of those. I think they're an absolute blast, and they seem to do well. People seem to like them, so I will keep it up.
And funny story, like we were supposed to do this together. Like we
Yes.
were supposed to get together and do one of these mixologist, whatever you want to call them.
Yes.
Because I think we were at I can't remember if it was I think it was Niagara Falls, Frightmare in the Falls, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we said, oh yeah. I was like, I'm into it. Let's do it, and we'll do it kind of like we'll do a Black Fawn type, whatever thing. And you said, yeah. So we were gonna do this, and then this pandemic hit, and we have not been able to do it. So I know we were talking a little bit before we got on the air about maybe we'll do it online like this. Maybe we'll do that. But I have done that a couple of times where I've mixed stuff up and tried to come up with an idea. I remember one time in university, there was like everyone pooled all their like leftover bottles of booze, like in one guy's room, and then the game was that somebody would say a name, like make up a name for a drink, like a stupid name like Peach Wobble or whatever, and then the next person would have to make that drink, and then the next person would have to take it, and then you would revolve around the circle. So I have some experience doing it. What do you think what's the best creation do you think you've come up with or discovered along your way as a mixologist, and also what's the worst that you've that is not palate friendly?
So I think my favorite was the Skull Island, which I did on this most recent video that's on the Creepy Crafter page. That was, oh gosh, what was in it? I think it was Malibu rum, creme de banane, watermelon juice, lychee juice, and I feel like there was something else in it as well. I think, oh gosh, I feel terrible that I can't remember, but it's got all the step-by-step instructions on the video as far as what's in it. But it just basically tasted like a melted banana popsicle. It's so good, and it's really dangerous because it's super freaking delicious, and it's like mostly alcohol. I think the third thing was just maybe white rum. I think I had like 3 different types of alcohol, and then watermelon juice and lychee juice, and that was it. But it's delicious. It's absolutely incredible. I love it. I want 27 of them at any time given.
That's called Skull Island. Why is it called Skull Island? Like, how do you come up with the names for it? You just make those up, or?
Yeah, so I was putting it together, and I had the banana, and it made me think of King Kong, and I was like, Skull Island.
And the worst?
And the worst one was this was not one that I created, but it was one that I found online and I wanted to try because it sounded really interesting. But it was a black margarita. And it used, I think, 4 shots of tequila or 4 ounces of tequila to make like one drink, which is too much tequila for one drink. And there was a lot of tequila, and there was not very much else to balance it out. I think it was mostly like tequila, a splash of orange juice, black food coloring, which I just mixed a bunch of different food colorings together to make it black, and then like soda water or something. And again, like the 4 shots of tequila. So that one did not go over very well for me. I had a rough afternoon after I drank that one.
One drink maximum, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that was not this most recent one, with the one before that I did on my drink videos. And I think the video opens up with me drinking it and making a very strong face because it was not good.
Okay, well, listen, if the invitation's still open, I'm still willing to do this, and I'm still willing to do it on camera for sure.
Yes, I want to do the infused alcohols that we talked about as well. You talked about like infusing your own vodka and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I've dabbled around with, or I should say, my significant others dabbled around with infusing alcohol with different fruits. So taking a bourbon and putting a bunch of peaches in it. So you could get a nice peach bourbon. That was really good. Cherry vodka, which was pretty good, and I can't remember the other one.
You said you did like a pineapple rum or something.
Pineapple rum, that's right. Yes, pineapple rum was the best. It was the tastiest, and it was like the pineapple chunks that usually what I do. So you just take a bottle of, pour it in a thing, and then you just pour the fruit in. You just let it ferment for like a week or two, because the alcohol will preserve the fruit, right? Just as long as it's submerged. But I take the fruit out afterwards, and I usually just put it in the container, and then I put it in the freezer. And you just take out like a pineapple chunk and eat it, like you get home from work, and it's like, oh, it's just a piece of fruit, but it's just loaded with like rum and stuff. It's great. So we'll figure something out. We'll have to coordinate. We'll have to do some logistical. We'll overcome some logistical challenges. And we'll try to get this out. Maybe this is a good way we can start doing something like that, and maybe we'll try it for 2021.
Absolutely, I think that'd be fantastic. I'll try and come up with some ideas, and we'll ferment some booze so we can have some very unique creations. I'm very excited.
Okay, awesome. Now, That's let's just move on. We do have a segment on our show, which I'm sure you've seen, about called Rapid Fire. Okay, and that includes. Just want to give a big shout out. Speaking of drinks, to our sponsor, which is Wellington Brewery. They create the amazing brew called Hell's Lager. Hell's Lager, Hell's yeah, and they are our sponsor for Black Fawn distribution. Both when we're on the convention circuit, they keep us going, and as well as when we're stuck at home and doing all this stuff in a pandemic, lockdown, quarantine, whatever you want to call it. They still keep us functioning. So big shout out to Wellington. Kelly, you've taken over our Instagram all day. You've subjected everyone to what you want them to see and what they need to hear. But we're going to put you on the spot with some hard-hitting journalistic questions. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Okay. So first thing that comes to your mind, basically, but rapid fire, help us out. What's your favorite horror franchise of all time and why?
Oh my God. Friday the 13th, because I just love Jason Voorhees, man. I think he's fantastically fascinating as far as like just the mythology behind it and the fact that he's so damn hard to kill. I really enjoy. And there's just something about a big lumbering guy with a machete that I find really entertaining. But also, if we're counting like smaller franchises, Evil Dead, if that counts, because Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, that counts
just because it's amazing and I love it so much. So
can we go one and a half? Did you buy the Friday the 13th box set?
No, I haven't bought it yet. I'm trying to save up for it.
But can we go one step further? Do you have a favorite Friday movie, like a Friday the 13th installment, or too many to pick?
Honestly, the one that always jumps to mind, and it's not like a legitimate favorite, it's just one that I love so much because of how ridiculous it is Jason X. That one is just absurd to me, and I think it's hysterical. And like David Cronenberg makes a cameo in it, which is great. But I did a whole list a couple years ago on 5 times that horror villains went to space. And Jason X is one of the ones I included along with Leprechaun in Space, or Leprechaun 4, I think, when he goes to space, and a couple other ones. But it's just so ridiculous and so absurd, and I just love it. I think it's just dumb and fun.
And every horror icon ends up in space, right? Like that's I think Freddy didn't go to space, but
he should.
But Leprechaun
went to space. Yeah, Critters went to space, even though they're from space. Dracula 3000 technically in space, even though he's Dracula. But I think they even called him I think they called him Count Orlok or something in that movie. They don't even call him Dracula. It's Dracula 3000 with no Dracula.
Of course, they needed something catchier for
that exactly.
That sweet new generation of film fans. Yeah. Okay, so moving on. There's a funny story about this because we just talked about getting together for drinks and mixing these drinks up, and we never got to do it, but we've talked about it numerous times. We've also talked about going to Fast Eddie's together numerous times, which is for those of you who don't know, is basically like it's. How would you describe it? It's almost like a Checkers for anyone watching in the States. It's just like a burger joint. It's a drive-through only. There's no sit down.
Yeah, it's like drive-through or walk-up only, and it's like super cheap burgers, but they're absolutely incredible. And they've got like these ridiculous combinations of like fries and milkshakes, and just it's so delicious, but like it's super cheap and trashy and amazing.
And I personally love it because it feels like it's something out of a movie. Like the menu seems like it's like out of a movie, and it's like I can't remember. I don't think like they have a mascot too, right? Like it's like a pack of French fries. It's got like a face on it or something. I love that stuff. Like it's funny to me. Like I'm the type of guy that if you took 2 googly eyes and put them on a hamburger, hilarious, right? So getting to the question, that's just the backstory in this, but you got to pick one. You can only pick one item from the legendary Fast Eddie's menu. What are you picking?
Damn it, because their burgers are so incredible, but pickle fries is what my heart says because it's pickle fries. I'm like, where else can you get pickle fries? Oh God, I'm so torn. I gotta go with the classic burger, man. I think their burgers, something about them. There's something about them that it's just like really delicious and really easy, and they're so cheap as well. I think like at a time when I was in high school, you could get like 5 of them for a ridiculously low price or something like that. They had like almost like a 2-for-1 on their burgers for a while there, back in the day, because they're so cheap, but they're just delicious.
And anyone who like Fast Eddie's does not sponsor this program. No. I wish they would, but like
they should.
Hopefully they will in the future. But it's like pickle fries. Nobody else has pickle fries. Fast Eddie's has pickle fries because they sound like they're in a movie. It's like it's a made up restaurant, but it's actual reality. You can check them out. There's one in Brantford. There's one in Cambridge. Is there one in St. Catharines or?
No, there's not anyone. I think the only ones that I'm aware of are like Cambridge, Waterloo area. So I'm devastated that there are none in this region because
It's so
I
cheap.
miss them so much.
It beats White Castle all to hell.
Oh,
it's
God.
much better than White Castle.
Daily, yeah. White Castle trash in comparison. Yeah.
Make sure you check that out. They got Anyway, this is now turning into a program or an ad for Fast Eddie's, but it's amazing. Go check it out. And I lost a bet to you once that I owe you. Now I owe you. I think I owe you a Fast Eddie's burger and a Fast Eddie's milkshake. Right? That was that was the deal. Right? So
yep.
We'll have
the
to
milkshakes
go.
are also amazing. Oh God, now I'm getting hungry.
Lots of stuff. We have lots of stuff to catch up on once we get back to normal here. But okay, so I'm going to ask you to put on your critic's hat for a second. But there's a rumor circulating right now that Keanu Reeves may be returning to the Speed franchise for a new installment. So will Speed 3 be good?
I think it depends who's directing it. I want them to turn it into like another John Wick, just because with Keanu coming back, like, you know that he can do it. I think I'm going to be optimistic and say it's going to be good because I think there's so much riding on it. And I think they know that like if Keanu's coming back, they have to make it worthwhile because it's Keanu Reeves and they got to make it good. So I'm going to put this out there into the universe and say like, please be good. Please be good. Yeah.
And in Keanu Reeves coming back to all his old franchises that he started with. So Bill and Ted, he's making Matrix 4, John Wick 4 is coming out next year as well. And now potentially, we don't know this for sure, but maybe Speed 3. I mean, is there anything the guy can't do? Like Canadian export, maybe the best Canadian export we've ever put out there. It's so awesome to see such a good guy because everyone talks about how he's such a nice dude. Really having this kind of renaissance in his career where he is just, and not just like, hey, now he's doing some interesting stuff. He's literally kicking ass everything he does, which is pretty awesome. Personal note, I always think that I feel like if you wanted to make the most money at the box office, I feel like you just put Keanu Reeves and Nicolas Cage in one movie. I don't care how you get it done. Either they're facing off against each other like Face Off, or they're on a team, like, or they're cops or whatever. Put those two guys in a movie and just like have them like go nuts. I feel like you'd make
box office gold. I think the other thing with Speed 3 though is if that is a thing, what are they going to hijack? What are they going to take over this time?
Not a boat. How about that?
Not a boat.
Like, I don't know if you can't really do a train.
No.
Okay, so maybe that's a question for our audience tuning in. If they make Speed 3, there's some type of vehicle that is speeding up. What is it? What do you think it should be? We'll throw some comments up by the end of this round. So, on a serious note, just as a fan, so take off your critic's hat, put on your fan hat or your fan cardigan or whatever. You could watch a movie with any director, dead or alive. Who would you pick, and what movie would you watch?
You mean I can watch it with the director like sitting next to me, or watch? Yeah. Oh gosh.
And of course, probably talk about it a little bit afterwards, or.
Yeah. That's a very good question.
And I didn't specify if it had to be their movie either. So
right. I feel like the one that immediately comes to mind, and I don't know why, but the one that jumps to mind first is I would watch Thriller: A Cruel Picture with Quentin Tarantino.
Okay.
I don't know why. Probably partially because that's the inspiration for the character of Elle Driver from Kill Bill. Actually, you know what? I would watch some kung fu films with Quentin Tarantino. Thriller: A Cruel Picture has way too many very close-up sex scenes. It would be incredibly awkward. I would pick something maybe like Half a Loaf of Kung Fu or Fearless Hyena or something, the early Jackie Chan movies, and watch those with Quentin Tarantino, because I feel like A, it would just be fun to watch and get really into that, and B, I would just ask him to give me his Spotify playlist, because I know he has music I've never heard before, and it's all probably amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge Tarantino fan myself, and I remember seeing this interview with him once where he said when he's thinking about making a new movie, he dives into his vinyl collection before anything else and finds that's the sound for the movie, which is
that's such a good way to do it.
Yeah,
If I
yeah.
were to ever steal someone's iPod is very out of date, but if I were ever able to like steal someone's iPod just to have their music collection, I would take either Quentin Tarantino's or Jordan Peele's because I feel like they would both have absolutely incredible music that I've never heard before.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, a kid couldn't. I agree. So, okay, going on next, we got a little tell us more rapid fire question. You accumulated a ton of experiences while covering horror over the years. Can you share one of your favorite moments?
Ooh, I think one of my favorite moments was talking to Takashi Miike because he's legendary and absolutely delightful. And it was really kind of cool talking with him. It was going through his translator, of course, but I asked him, if you were to give any advice to any emerging wannabe directors, folks that want to get into filmmaking, what would your advice be? And he told me that he would advise them to drink milk. Because one time on set, he broke his leg and then the cast and crew had to like carry him around for the rest of filming. And it was really awkward and like just slowed everything down. He's like, just drink milk, just make sure your bones are strong. And that to me was just it's such a small, but it was just like a really earnest and sweet moment that I had he had like a nice little chuckle afterwards. And it was very, very cute because he's just delightful. So either that or being on the red carpet for Halloween and talking to Jamie Lee Curtis was amazing and also terrifying because she's incredible and legendary and again very intimidating just because of like who she is and what she's done. But that was one that like I'll definitely always kind of think about as far as like, oh, I got to do that. That was really cool.
And a big shout out to Jamie Lee Curtis, just officially won Best Scream Queen ever in the history of film from
She earned it.
MTV Movie Awards, right?
Yeah. She's absolutely earned it for sure.
Yeah,
she put in the work.
Yeah. So that's it for our rapid fire question. Thanks for being a good sport about that. We try and keep it a little bit light there in the middle. But also brought to you again by Wellington Beer. They put out this amazing beer called Hell's Lager, and it's delicious. So make sure you buy your local LCBO or beer store, or pop over to the Wellington Brewery, actual brewery that's located here in Guelph. So. Which is where I'm broadcasting from. Now, let's just change gears for a second here. Obviously, we've talked about the pandemic to death. I know everyone's tired of it. Keep doing what we're doing. Let's get to the other side, of course. But lots of stuff in the news this week about streaming and a lot of changing the dynamic of how films get released and how people watch them. The news, of course, with the big bombshell this week was HBO Max and Warner's decision to release films through there. But also there's tons of stuff happening with Mank just got released, David Fincher's new film through Netflix. Is all this changing now? Like, are we going to go back to kind of what we were used to before, or how are we? What do we think are going to be the main challenges to do that as we come out of the pandemic? Like, have you given that some thought at all?
Absolutely. I think that it's interesting because it's a combination of like a pandemic and no one being able to go to movie theaters, as well as the rise in pirating and like streaming and torrenting and things like that, where I feel like the best way to combat the idea of taking movies and pirating them is to make them available for folks at their home anyways, for streaming. So you look at things like Netflix and Shudder and every other streaming platform that there is, making it easily available for folks to get those movies from the comfort of their own homes, because even when we're not in a pandemic, people can be lazy, myself included. I love going to the movie theater. I love going to film festivals. I think the big thing that's going to be tricky moving forward is how film festivals are working. What I would love to see is smaller films getting released through streaming services. Like Shudder has been awesome for giving opportunity to a lot of smaller indie horror films to get released there and like giving them a wider audience, which is awesome. And they've been doing a fantastic job. Their curating is brilliant. But I would love to see a lot of the smaller movies getting released there because they're not going to get as much theatrically. It makes more sense to put them on streaming services, but still have them released through film festivals where they can go through distribution, they can go through buyers, they can go through reviewers, things like that. So I think it's a bit of a tricky pickle because you want folks to be able to see them and you want folks to be able to enjoy them on the big screen, but pandemic or no, the way that we consume media has changed. In a really big way, I think. So Yeah, so I think that it's definitely changing. I feel like moving forward, once we eventually get out of this pandemic, it's going to be the big question of how we move forward. I think what we'll probably see is larger films will continue to get a theatrical release. Smaller films will do the film festival circuit and then go straight to whatever Netflix, Shudder, Amazon Prime, et cetera, which I think is probably a good way to do it because, again, it makes it so that you can get larger audiences watching your films. But I think the days of like the big blockbuster picture, like, or even the smaller movies having like a theatrical run, I think that's not going to happen as much. I think it's going to be the big blockbuster pictures that are going theatrically, your Marvel films, et cetera, et cetera. And the smaller films are probably going to go straight through streaming services, which might be the better way to do it.
Well, I think that, I mean, the one thing about, like, I mean, I've got a pretty good setup. I love movies. I collect movies. So, you know, upgraded a couple things in my set because I'm planning on hibernating for the winter and just watching a ton of stuff from home. I mean, right now, just so everyone knows, like theaters in most of Ontario are closed. Some cities, they have them open. I think London's still open, but in Guelph, they're closed. But I have gone to the theater a couple times during the pandemic when it was open. A couple times, and I've said this in previous interviews too. It's like there was a couple times where I went and I was like the only person there. I was like one person in the theater, or there was like 3 people in the theater, and it was such more of an enjoyable experience to not have like. And now I miss the hype of opening night. Like I remember going to see Dark Knight when it first opened, or like, you know, what was the other film? It doesn't matter, but you know, you got to line up outside and you can't get in. It's just packed to the rafters, and everyone's sort of having that. You're having that kind of community sort of experience while watching this film all together with a bunch of strangers you don't know. But I would say this is that, you know, no matter how big of a screen you put in your house, no matter how rich you are, no matter how much money you have, great, but it'll never be like a screen that's 6 stories tall, 50 feet wide. I mean, maybe somebody has that, but I don't even think most people, even people that might have some sort of setup like that in their house, have that big of a screen. So I'm wondering if like IMAX is the way to bring people back in. I think I agree with you, like with the big blockbusters kind of taking up a chunk of that time. But I guess I'm with you as well. Like, I mean, I feel like in the summer I always want to go see movies. Like every day I'll go every day, every night, go see a matinee, whatever. But in the winter, like we get harsh winters in Canada. You look outside and you're like, I really want to watch a movie, but I really just don't want to go anywhere. So
yeah, and I think that also, I think that having physical media as well, like there's tons of collectors right now, and especially when you go to like any kind of convention, that's a lot of things, myself included, that I go and I look for is like, what DVDs could I get? What can I own now so that I can have it on my shelf and like pick it up and watch it whenever I want. Especially with some things that aren't necessarily going to make it to a streaming platform because they are much smaller or older or whatever the case may be. So I think physical media will always be around, but I think I don't know how much it's going to change in terms of technology because like as we're moving forward, we've got Blu-ray and 4K, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that there's still a lot of people that are still holding on to DVDs, that are still holding on to VHS. I still have like all my VHS from when I was a kid growing up. I've got my Conan the Barbarian and my True Lies and Face Off and all that stuff on my original VHS copy because I'm just like, it's nostalgic. But I don't think physical media is going to be going away anytime soon. I think there's still something that people love to have that collector within them, especially when it comes to box sets like the Friday the 13th box set and things like that. I love the idea of film festivals. I love the idea of people being able to get tickets to go see these independent movies that haven't got distribution yet, but like they're working on it. And it's such an amazing movie that all these programmers have like put together of like their wish list of like, we think you're going to like these things. Here you go. So I love the idea of film festivals. I think that that's not going to go away anytime soon, and nor do I think it should. I think it's perfect and I love them. I can't wait to be able to go do them in person again. It's been really cool to be able to do things digitally online so I can watch screeners for the comfort of my own home on my own time, which is nice. So because I do work a day job as well, so that I can watch them after work. I don't have to worry about going out to Toronto and driving out to Toronto to make a 7 p.m. screening or something like that. So it makes that a lot easier. But I do definitely miss the experience, again, like we were talking about earlier, of going and being around other fans and talking to people in line and getting recommendations and having that community aspect. I think we're missing in a big way right now.
And I think I know there's a lot of stuff going on. It's still a struggle right now for film festivals that are currently trying to kind of get their 2020 program out, as well as early 2021. Lots of people still in the digital kind of zone, because we're not sure what's going to happen, especially countries in Europe and as well as places in the United States. So we don't want to discredit that or discount that at all. We obviously know it's hard, but I do feel like the silver lining in this ominous dark cloud is the fact that we haven't done them in person for a year, maybe 2 years by the time we really kind of get back to normal, or at least a year and a half. And it will be this, I feel it might be this brand new experience. Like we miss them. We want to go to them again. We can't right now. And therefore it'll be like brand new stuff when we go and do it again. So I'm hoping that like you said, like having that experience and I think you might see kind of maybe even an uptick in attendance and people wanting to kind of go back to and realizing, hey, I always talk to the same people every year. And so if I missed a year, no big deal. But then when you actually miss a year, you're like, oh, I miss talking to those people. Right. So I'm hoping that that's kind of what happens.
Yeah, it's gonna be like the first day of school all over again, of like going and like getting excited and like getting all your stuff together and like going and meeting people that you haven't seen for like the whole summer or whatever. I think it's gonna have that first day of school feel, which I'm really excited about. But again, like I again, not to discredit online festivals, I think it's fantastic for being able to get more journalists and more people seeing films that wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to regularly because of distance and because of timing and things like that. So it's been a fantastic option for things like that as well. I know Fantasia this past year, but the year before I did long distance as well, just because I couldn't make it out to Montreal. So it was amazing to have that option available to me, that I could still cover it, but not have to worry about like getting out to Montreal and trying to take time off work and like get a hotel and all that stuff as well.
Yeah, and I know the online component too is, just to be clear too, like both of us understand the challenges that come with that. I know Fantasia was like one of the first that really had to pivot towards that sort of format. They did an amazing job, and I worked with a lot of the press behind the scenes when we did a couple of our titles, with one of our titles. But it was fantastically run under all that pressure and all those circumstances, and everyone's sort of taken parts, I think, of that festival as well as others that happened, and really kind of made the experience their own as best that they can, right? So it's kudos to them, a raise of the glass to them for sure. But I know I don't want to speak for those guys, but I know they're all itching to get back to a regular film festival with in-person people. So hopefully that can happen in either next year or definitely the year after that. So now just going to wrap up. We've kind of gone a little bit longer than anticipated. So if you're still good for a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just a couple quick questions or a couple quick comments from our audience. Throwing in here, Candace just says VHS. I'm assuming that's what Keanu Reeves is going to stop from speeding down.
Stop a hijacked VHS tape.
And a follow up of Candace, this is the best answer I thought. She said Bullet Train in Japan for Keanu Reeves to stop speeding down.
Yes,
that's a pretty good idea.
I like that,
and it could tie into a lot of stuff. So does Sandra Bullock come back as well? Do you need her back for the third movie? Because she was in the second one too, right?
True, she was. Need is a strong word.
Would you like to see her back?
I think it would be good, just because she was in the second one as well. I think it would be good to have her back, but I think that Keanu is what everyone's coming for. Like, he's the reason that we're here for Speed 3 in its non-existence at this moment. He's why we're here for this.
Okay, fair enough. I'll remember that. If I ever bump into Sandra Bullock, I'll mention that. So listen, you've been writing throughout these uncertain times as well as before. You're going to continue writing, as far as I know. And what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about kind of getting into that and becoming a writer or a reviewer, interviewer? Is there any tips that you could pass on to make their journey a little bit less strenuous?
Feel comfortable with your own voice. So I for me, again, one of the reasons I love writing lists is because I feel like it really gives me the opportunity to sort of use my own voice, which most of the time I write the way that I speak, which like I've got little sides and things like that, and like little side notes and whatever. And I'll throw in like little comical bits here and there. So I write the way I speak for the most part. And I feel like finding that voice and being comfortable with that voice is a huge, huge thing. It sets you apart from everyone else. It's the reason people want to read what you write is your voice and feeling like they have that connection with you versus, there's tons of reviewers, there's tons of people that write tons of things. And the reason that folks will want to read what you write is because of who you are as a person, how you're writing, and also what you're writing about. My advice would be just do it, I think. Even if you're starting off on your own blog, starting off small, it's even just good to build a portfolio to have, so if you ever do want to apply to someone that's larger, you can have that portfolio to sort of send out and say, I've got experience, I've been doing this is what I've been writing, this is some writing samples that I've got. That way also you don't have to prep some writing samples like I did at the last minute. You can just have them ready to go, which is great. But just do it if you're passionate about it, and if it's something you're really excited about doing. Even if it's just on Letterboxd, review movies on Letterboxd, that's great. Review movies on your own blog, that's great. Review movies wherever you want to do it. Just if it's something you want to do, then just go for it, I think is the big takeaway from that.
And you mentioned having a voice, and I know that ties kind of back into like being truthful and being and all that stuff. But what's the difference between being honest and being shitty? So because I feel that that's the one thing that I think gets confused a lot, is that just because I'm critical doesn't give a license to be rude or anything like that. I mean, how do you square that away, and like, what's your process when it comes down to that?
First off, just don't be a dick. Second, folks worked on this movie. People care about this movie. A lot of people put a lot of work into it. If you don't like it, that's fine. But you don't have to be a dick about it. You still have to take into consideration and appreciate the fact that, like, a writer worked their ass off on this. A director's really proud of this. Someone put their heart and soul into this movie, and to just take a big dump on it for no reason is kind of a dick move. So I feel like it's absolutely be honest, be truthful, but you don't have to be mean about it. There's a way that you can present your thoughts and your ideas and your criticism that's earnest and that's open, but that still doesn't destroy a movie. It doesn't take a big dump on a movie. There's one movie that I've given a very negative review, and it's just the most obnoxious movie I've ever seen. But also I did a lot of research into it and found out, like, the director of the movie like crowdsourced a sequel for it that never came, and then he kept everyone's money, and then when they were trying to get their money back, he was like dodging everyone's calls, and like it was just a huge sketchy situation. So I'm like, I don't feel bad being mean to this guy because he sounds like kind of an asshole,
right?
But that's the one time I've done that. For everyone else, if there's ever anything that I'm not a big fan of in the movie, I try and find something that I like about it and write about what you like about it as well as what you don't like. Make it even, make it balanced, be fair. I think is the big thing is you want to be honest, you want to be fair, but you want to be respectful as well.
Fair enough. And listen, we're over an hour long. I think this is the longest, one of the longest, or if not the longest interview we've ever done. The longest edition of Takeover Tuesday. Everyone's getting their money's worth tonight. This is the last Takeover Tuesday until the new year. We're going to take a bit of a break for the holidays. But hey, take some time for yourself. Tell us what you have coming up, what you're working on, and what your plans are for 2021.
So like I mentioned earlier, I'm currently working on my best of 2020 list. So I'm excited to put that out there because, again, it's been a while since I've done a list, and I want to do some lists in the new year because it's been a while and I love doing them. So I've got that coming up. I want to do some more videos through the Creepy Crafter, so you can keep an eye out through Creepy Crafter. You can follow me on Instagram at Kelly McNeely, which I think I linked to a couple times through the Takeover, so you can find it through Black Fawn Distro's information. And other than that, I think in 2021, it's just going to be continuing to watch films and continuing to write about them and hopefully interviewing some cool people. Maybe eventually go to see some sets if that's something that we're allowed to do. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see where 2021 takes us, I guess.
And keep an eye out for those lists because according to Kevin, Kelly got the best list. Love that. I want that. You should use that that should be a tagline for your website. Well, listen, Kelly, thanks so much for joining us and taking over our Instagram today. It was a lot of fun. I want to just say that I know that you're a huge supporter and a huge ally of the horror community and the genre community and genre films in general. If anyone watching did not get that idea from your answers about film festivals and supporting films and directors and writers and reviewing their work and being critical and fair. I am here to tell you as a third party that she is. And so thanks so much for doing what you do and for supporting not just us, obviously, but all the filmmakers out there. It is a lot of work and takes a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and money to get something off the ground. And it's, to be honest, it's people like you that kind of, support, keep that thing growing and keep that thing moving. So thanks so much for joining us, and thanks so much for doing what you do. Quick, you're going to stick around afterwards. We're going to chat a little bit just to touch base, but also check out Kelly's Facebook down below, facebook.com/creepycrafter for all of her mixology videos, as well as her crafts that she does. She's got these wicked, awesome, I have to return some videotape mugs from American Psycho. You should check them out. They're awesome. I'm going to get one, and it'll be on the next. Tell you what, I'll put it on the next broadcast that we do in 2021. I'll make sure that I'm drinking my Hell's Lager out of that mug. But just as a quick word of out to everyone watching, and we just want to remind everyone to stay safe and help out. So listen, we're in this pandemic. It sucks. We're trying to get to the other end. We've got a vaccine coming, so that's good. And hopefully we can get to the point where, we can get everything back to normal, or at least a little less crazy than it is right now. A lot of people are hurting right now. A lot of small businesses out there that are struggling. Make sure you support them over the holidays. Make sure you support them in the new year, and just give back to where you can. So wear a mask, wash your hands, practice social distancing, follow our health regulations, just to make sure we can get out of this so we're not just stuck in this big dark cloud I was talking about earlier. And just think about others. Think about the people around you and help out where you can. So if you can help somebody with, even if it's supporting a small business with a Google review, or just following them on Instagram, giving them a shout out, getting some takeout, whatever you can do, they need your help right now. So let's do everything we can to support them. And of course, happy holidays. This is our last show until 2021. So happy holidays and happy new year. Wishing everyone the best out there. Thanks for tuning in for all the Takeover Tuesdays this year. And we'll see you soon. Kelly, anything you want to add before we go?
I was just going to say, in the wise words of High School Musical, we're all in this together. So, just be good to each other. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank you for having me. It's been fantastic. It's been a lot of fun, and I had an absolute blast. And it was really kind of cool to be on this side of the interview for once.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you'll come back sometime.
Absolutely.
If you'll let us have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Kelly. I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone else for tuning in. Appreciate your comments and questions. And we'll see you on the other side. All the best, and take care.